I'd like to call to order the Lenox Public Schools School Committee meeting of April 10th, 2023. And just note that David Rimmel's in Arizona and he won't be here tonight, and Christine's in Colorado and won't be here tonight. So it's the Flags.
Let's make a lot of crazy decisions.
We should-
Let's give something to do when they come back.
So hearing of visitors.
Oh, just check.
Just trying to see that. Nobody.
At this point.
Okay, correspondence on. I think, I'll bring this back up again when we get the draft calendar, but I think some of us, maybe all of us, received a communication from a parent who had some input on this year's calendar. Hoping that we could do something different at February vacation than what we have been doing for the 100 years or so. That's the only correspondence I had. Board report, school meeting minutes of March 20, 2023.
Move to accept the meeting minutes of March 20th, 2023.
Second,
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Sure, thank you. I'm in the process of just about completing the next superintendent's newsletter, so I won't repeat everything that's going to be shared in that, but I do want to just thank everyone for just about navigating this very long stretch of calendar and time between February and April. It's an incredibly busy time of the year where I think a lot of teaching and learning goes on. We have MCAS testing in high gear. And I know that as we transition from winter to spring, everyone is excited to sort of look forward towards a little bit warmer temperatures, sunshine, and a lot of end of the year activities, celebrations that are impending. I do want to thank all our families for their support around the testing that we do. As I said in my newsletter, testing doesn't define who we are, it doesn't define who our students are, but it is an important part of the work that we do in concert with the Department of Ed. And we've had incredible attendance levels in our schools, really supported by our staff. I think they've done an incredible job. Our students are working really hard. And I just want to thank our parents, our families for helping to support what can be kind of an anxiety producing event for everyone, for both kids and for schools. And so we appreciate as we navigate through this work, it's occurring right now, and will continue to occur for a little bit longer. And then we roll right into SATs and advanced placement exams and ACTs and kind of never ending. But thank you, everyone. Thanks our families for that support. We have there's been an incredible amount of events. I can barely keep up with it, and everything from poetry conferences to contests to youth conferences. I was able to attend the Morris science fair, and we have the kids are amazing. I've been to a lot of science fairs, and the energy in that school was just really, really, really inspiring. The kids are inspiring. And as a former science teacher and someone who's been to a lot of these events, I've seen a lot of projects, and I've seen projects that range in quality. I've also seen projects that range in how much do the parents do it and how much do the kids do it. And I saw really authentic work from our kids in those projects, and it was impressive. Good questions. My interaction with a dozen or so booths that I got to visit, the students were really attentive, really energetic, and I just really want to commend Principal Kelly, all the teachers, our volunteer judges, our parents who supported our students, and really what I think is an event that hopefully will inspire students to ask questions, think about being entrepreneurs, to think about being scientists, and really think critically about their world as they ask those questions. So kudos to all the folks at Morris who did an incredible job. Since the last meeting, obviously, we've, as a nation, we continue to navigate, school tragedies, and it's really sad that this is the world that we have to navigate as educators. But I continue to just reinforce with our community that we work incredibly hard and make school security and safety the highest priority, and it's a never ending and finished job. We're constantly looking at protocols. We're looking at equipment for monitoring. We're looking at security devices, and we're doing all that in concert with the fire and police department. We're both looking at the plans, and then we're practicing the plan in a way that hopefully is supportive of our students and doesn't scare our students, right? We want us to navigate that line very carefully. But I know that Morris did a series of drills recently, and they did a relocation drill, and they got A+ across the board. So we appreciate our students and our faculty and our administrative team for ensuring that happens. We'll be continuing to meet. I'm working on a draft update to the emergency plan that hopefully will capture all the activities, working with the police department on some auditing tools we can use to look at what we're doing in the district right now. And I think we'll again be in excellent shape as we transition to Dr. Collins. But really, in a small community like this, you have an incredible advantage of knowing everyone and being neighbors. And it's just really comforting to know that you can pick up the phone and talk to the police chief and the fire chief in a matter of minutes. So thanks to our partners on the town side. Also want to let everyone know I've been connecting with Dr. Collins, as I say at every meeting. It's been a pleasure to sort of get to know him via Zoom and by phone. Seems like a really great guy, and as he navigates his way northbound on the Intercoastal Waterway, and looks to transition to living here in the community and being close by. I'm very excited to, I think, welcome him into the community. We think that that's going to happen very early in June. As I continue to say with him, to him and to all of you all, my job for you all is to help smooth this transition and prepare the way for Dr. Collins. And as soon as he's prepared to be here, we'll have a short transition, and then I will get out of the way and let him take over the reins. So really excited also that he'll be here likely for a lot of the end of year celebrations and events, because I think that'll be an excellent time for him to interact with people, get to know folks, learn a little bit more about your community, and really be part of the positive energy, the celebration that happens at the end of the year. Part of the work we've been doing together has been the middle and high school principal search. And I really want to thank this an amazing committee that was part of the process. I think we have 3 folks here right at the table who were excellent participants. And I think we ran a very solid process that is nearing the end. And so we're hoping as we consult and do the final due diligence and reference checking and vetting our candidates, that we'll have an announcement very shortly on the permanent principal position. So again, it takes a village, and the perspectives that I gained, that both of us gained, and Dr. Collins was involved in the interviews in terms of being present when the committee was deliberating during the interviews, but also in follow-up interviews explicitly with the candidates via Zoom and via phone. So it was very important to me that he was involved in this process, because while I do have the authority to hire the principal, it was very important that the team be built. He was part of building his team as we move, as he enters into this role and moves the district forward. I guess we could probably transition to a few of the memos that I provided in your packet today. Maybe I'll hit those first, and then we'll do an overview of the field trip. But I provided as backup today just 2 memos, and these are things that maybe you received in the past. They're things I've done with my school committee, and I found them helpful. One is just a rolling list of end of year activities. And so there's so much that happens. I mean, I can barely keep track and reading both of the school newsletters each week on all the activities. But as we get post-April vacation, there is going to be an incredible amount of activity. And so I thought it would be wise just to share that with the committee because there may be opportunities for you all to plug in. They love it when I show up. They love it when you show up. It's really important, I think, that the folks who are in on the governmental side of the school department work also are present, you know, when the kids are out and about and doing their thing. So I thought it would be helpful to provide that. And then the second memo I provided was just a quick update, as I promised I would at the last meeting on personnel, you know, ongoing personnel items. And this is fairly general. I just provided a memo that describes to you positions that, you know, within the recent quarter, last quarter have been either filled or in process. I wanted you to have a sense of what the anticipated openings were for the coming year, and there will likely be more because there's always personnel movement this time of year. We have always a certain degree of ongoing monitoring where we look at folks who are requesting a variety of leaves from medical to maternity and how we fill those positions short term. And then I wanted, because it was raised at the last meeting, just to give you all a sense of what we have for retirement at the current time currently. So we are in hiring season right now. You'll see jobs posted, the post boards are full. And the good news is that we're getting really good responses on applications. And so our principals and our directors are beginning to interview and vet candidates. As I have instructed them, we won't make firm final offers until the day after the town meeting and the budget is approved. And when that happens, we will begin to staff permanently for next year. But I'd say we're in excellent shape. And then obviously there's a few positions that I listed here just to kind of let you know that there's a constant annual flow around filling summer positions, thinking about fall positions for advisors and coaches, and then all this distributed leadership positions that exist in those schools. We're working right now as an admin team on summer planning and start of the year planning. So I'll probably have an update for you at the next meeting on those two things, just so you have a sense of how we're fitting investing the time in opening days, how we're thinking about professional development, recognizing that I also want Dr. Collins to have the opportunity to shape this when he comes in June. But there's as you look at the calendar today, you'll see some of the early thinking about how we're structuring some of that time. So probably now would be a good time to maybe invite Principal Ames and Ms. Dupuy to talk about the French field trip to Guadalupe in April of 2024. We had this on the agenda last meeting, and it's probably I cross signaled on this. I'm sure it was my fault. I'll take the blame, but I appreciate you being here tonight to talk about the trip.
Sure.
The materials are in your packet, so why don't you give us an overview?
Well, we have to. This is a trip. I'd like to just start getting into the rhythm again of traveling every other year. In truth, I'm just back from Quebec. Yeah, got back last night. Which is a trip that I just wanted to offer essentially for my seniors who, because of all the fun we've been having the last few years, we haven't really been able to travel. But so this Guadalupe trip is something that I envision to start setting into our program as an every other year trip. We have been traveling to Paris, but I'd love to transition to a trip that's a little more culturally rich, that gives the kids more opportunity to interact with local people, that's going to give them the opportunity to learn a little more about the cultural situation in the country. Guadalupe is going to tell us about colonialism, slavery, the political situation, and this particular trip is offering all of that. It offers French lessons. I'm not sure that we really need that. So I have a lot of opportunity of, messing around a little bit with this itinerary. But, I'm interested in this opportunity to give the kids something, a deeper experience, both in French and in culture. So, it's also gonna be less expensive than a trip to Paris. So these are a few checks on my list that's turning me to this. It's also recommended by my colleagues in Plattsmouth who have taken this trip several times.
So I'm gonna hand it over to the committee. I don't know if you have questions.
Okay, so we, first off, we need a motion to accept it, and we'll get that on the floor, and then we'll have a discussion.
Okay, so I move to approve the trip to Guadalupe as proposed by Madame Dupuy for April of 2024, correct? April 2024. Assuming it's during the April break.
Yes.
That's subject to
Mhm.
our later discussion about calendars.
Sure.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I have, one quick question about the date, because, you mentioned in one place April vacation, but the dates that are listed on the envoy sheet are 4/8 to 4/15, which would not be our vacation.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I think that they just threw out
Okay.
something.
So,
Yeah, I told them that all this is subject to your approval, and they probably have no idea what our dates are.
right,
So I will contact them after you approve and give them my dates, but I'm not sure I will know them right away, but I'll at least
well, it
say.
always includes Patriots Day.
Yeah,
It's the
okay.
third Monday,
So I'll
so it
start
always
with that.
includes the third Monday.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't give them any dates.
Yeah, and we'll be voting on next year's calendar, so we'll know.
Yeah,
I'll know soon, really.
Certain very
Yeah,
soon.
great.
I was curious about the trade-offs with going here versus going to France. You had mentioned the sort of opportunity to interact with local people and learn about the culture. Is that what makes that more available here than it would be in France?
So I've been doing a trip to Paris every other year for, I don't know, 10, 12 years. And because Paris is such a big, big city, the opportunity to really dive into a local culture is harder. It's not impossible. I can get local tours. I can say, okay, we're gonna hook up with a patisserie, and you can get the guy who owns a patisserie to speak French with the kids. But to really, to go into a market and have that one-on-one situation, it's harder. It's easier in a small town. It's easier in a smaller country to really have those interactions. And so, going to a smaller town, going to a smaller city, even, talking about Quebec, it was easier. So as soon as I can get to, the micro, it's better for the language regardless. It's not impossible, no way. I mean, I've been traveling to Paris for a long time with the kids. It's just, people are gonna be more patient, more open, and for our kids, that's just better.
And in terms of cost, is what makes it cheaper? I would guess that it's quite expensive to get to or.
Well, so I can only say that when I spoke to envoys, I started with the Paris trip. So I said, okay, this is what I usually do. So I used to do Paris on my own. Like, I didn't need I needed a company to handle it. But these days I really do feel like, because of COVID or whatever it is, I need somebody protecting me to say, okay, if I cancel, what happens? I do need a little bit of a parachute. So I said, generally go to Paris, and the price point was really not attainable for our group. I can't remember what it was, 4,100, 5,000. And I said, listen, that's not gonna work for our kids. I can't put that out. And they said, okay, well, tell me what your budget is. And I said, well, generally speaking, for an overseas trip, it's like 3,500, the most, maybe 4,000. They said, well, you really need to do a few more, like Guadalupe, that kind of thing. I said, okay, well, show me what that is. Meanwhile, I spoke to some colleagues, I did some research to see if anyone had gone on that trip, and it turns out that yes, Carmen Guthrie Perkins, who I'd worked with for a long time at BCD, had, and she loved it. So the price point where I can't say exactly what it was, whether it's just that Paris is more expensive, it's a big city or not, I can't say that, but I do know that they priced it in it was, I can't bring that to the parents and say, you're gonna pay this, when I know that there's something more affordable, and in my mind as a teacher, better.
And I personally say, I think it's exciting. I think it's a really great opportunity to understand too, that, you know, when we think about world languages, where language is used, how it's adapted, thinking a lot about people I know who are from Brazil versus people from Portugal and how they adapt language. I really think when we want our students to be global citizens and to be well prepared, and thinking about the reality of why there's French in a, so I apologize, geography is not my suit, but this is in the Caribbean or more.
Yeah.
That why there's language in various countries and how they adapt language, and thinking about the history of our world, which is there is a lot with colonialism and how we've imported and exported culture. I think it's a really cool opportunity, and then students being able to be one-on-one with a community that's very different than theirs. I think it's awesome. I know Abby, my daughter Abby, who went on one of your early trips to Paris, loved that. And then while in college, she went to the Dominican Republic and worked in building and worked in helping artists, because she was in art school. And that was also a really rich experience. When she was in Asia, she went to villages in Vietnam. So for all these kids, I think cities are wonderful. Going to Paris is dreamy, but we're really talking about that access to global learning and understanding. I think it's pretty amazing. And I really personally am excited about the opportunity for the kids to do that kind of learning.
How many juniors and seniors would you anticipate?
Juniors are 16, seniors, you know, rising seniors, they'll be 16. Juniors, hard to tell, 10, I mean, assuming like everybody, we're gonna take it on 10 to 12. So, but
If everyone took it on, you need more chaperones.
obviously, I will start with, let's
Start learning French.
yeah.
Have you sense of what kind of activities you would do while you're there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole list of activities from, you know, poetry to like, you know, the conversations with people, local people about the effect of colonialism and like the political situation. They're offering French lessons, and I was saying, I'm not sure I'm gonna do that, because that was the only criticism from Hotchkiss, that it was a little dry. I don't know how a French lesson could be possibly dry. I will take that criticism and I will, you know, maybe cross that off the list, because but so they've given us a kind of a suggested itinerary, which I will go through critically if it's
Just thinking about art and music and all the things.
yeah,
that
there's
we
so
have,
many things to dig
opportunities.
into.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Any other questions for Mr. Freeman?
I mean, just I'll say it, this is what I do, but I'm assuming I know in this one, a lot of the students do fundraisers, sometimes they.
Oh, that's.
Dinners, car washes, and
Now,
all kind of that, if that's already
I'm
begun.
not, yeah, I'm not coming to you in the fall, I'm coming to you now so they can think, okay, summer jobs, we have to start now. Because this is way more expensive than the Montreal trip that we just did, or the Quebec trip we just did, we need to spend some real time.
I think the students plan some fun activities where they can raise money.
Absolutely, yeah, that it just means we need more time to get more significant money in the bank there.
Okay. Favor?
Hi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excited to hear about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
And let us know about those numbers and how many shots.
How's your French,
Some
Bob?
volunteers up there.
Oh, I have no French. We.
I was
No.
in high school, but you know, I never did immersion, so.
Thank you. So while we're on the middle and high school, we're gonna jump right into athletics. And I'm happy that our athletic director, Maggie Rivers, is with us today. So thanks for being here. And also Principal Ames is here. We have applied for and been approved to have a soccer cooperative team through the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association. And in order for that to be official, we need review and approval from the school committee. So I've asked Dr. Ames and Ms. Rivers to just give us an overview of what we're looking to do here in boys soccer.
You want to start?
I'm gonna turn over to you.
If you can just come up a little bit closer so folks can hear on the owl. Thank you.
It's okay.
Start by saying I'm really excited this is happening. I think it's great for our region, it's great for the sport, and it sort of bolsters the relationship we have with some of our surrounding communities in terms of cooperative sports. I think it's a very, very positive thing.
So basically, I think Lee has not had a boys soccer team since 2014. It's something we've kind of been playing with for a couple years. They did try to co-op with Taconic. That fell through because of the travel for their students. And our numbers have been a little bit higher in past years. The last 2 seasons, we've kind of taken a hit. Just the numbers, COVID, all that stuff is kind of, wouldn't say killed our boys soccer program, but it's really kind of put a little bit of a detriment on them. So in talking with their AD, we really tried to get this through and support them. I don't know if most of you probably know, but we have a co-op with them for football that they've hosted us for probably over 15 years. And it's really great for the kids that do that because it keeps them in school, keeps their attendance up. They're really excited to play football for Coach Thompson, so we're just kind of looking to mirror that with soccer this fall. Can totally answer questions if you have them. There's more.
Just give us a sense of what, the natural question will be, how many students do we anticipate from Lenox, participating, and how many do we anticipate
Sure.
will likely participate?
So going through the numbers for Lenox, we're looking at about 27-ish.
Okay.
I say ish, mostly because it's hard to have an understanding of 7th and 8th grade kids.
And that's varsity and JV.
That's both teams together, yes. And then from Lee total, just confirm this again today, at most 5 kids coming from them. Obviously, if we open the signups, it could turn into
Yeah.
more, but
And it's important to, so they've been struggling with their soccer programs, as Maggie said, for a long time, and they were playing with St. Joe's. When that program was still viable, they were playing with Berkshire Hills for just a season. And I know it was 3 years ago, they were able to get enough kids together, they had to have a JV team. You can't have a varsity team the first year, you have a JV team. And they had a strong cohort. Most of those kids graduated that year. Right now it's 5. It might not always be 5, so I want to be clear about. Right now, it's a relatively small number. And these co-ops are renewed annually. So it's not something we're committing to if the numbers were to increase significantly.
It's
Yeah.
a 2-year commitment.
it's a 2-year commitment right now, yes. I think the thought is in hopes, when we're looking at contact sports and concussions, making Lenox 9 through 12 for soccer if we can, and then hopefully a robust youth program could support the high school. Right now, we haven't seen that in years. We haven't been able to attain that at all, both for the girls and the boys, but that is the hope for both Lenox and Lee, just to get more kids involved. Not for any kind of competitive advantage, just really just trying to keep kids on the field and out of trouble.
And I know we're focused on soccer tonight and approval of the committee, but can you just give the general public an overview of what our cooperative team relationships are in across
Okay.
all sports? Because I know we have
Yeah,
a student who I believe participates on a
yeah,
cooperative team
we
right
have
here.
a swimmer here who
Right.
participates in Monument. So for fall, we have football that hosts us and Lee. Let me just look at this too. And then crew, we have Monument,
Joins us, but we only have 2 this season.
right, so we
And
host
they're
crew
both graduate.
and we allow Monument students to come over with us in the fall.
Mhm.
Winter, we are the host for Alpine Ski. We get like 2 skiers from Lee. Swim, Monument is the host, and we have quite a few swimmers that go over there, I think. 5, okay. And then hockey, Mount Everett hosts us. And we had a really great number of kids this year, 6 or 7, I would say. And that's just stuff they're excited about because they're committed to it, and just making the drive alone to Mount Everett says a lot about their drive to participate in sports. That's almost an hour drive for them. So then the spring for track and field, we host Lee, so we allow Lee to come and participate with us for track. they host us for girls lacrosse, so we have 4 girls lacrosse players that play for Lee right now. And then our newest co-op, which we host, is lacrosse, which we co-op with 4 schools, Mount Everett, Monument, and Lee, and ourselves. And we are the host for that. That's actually just where I was. We have about 30 kids total that participate.
So is there a JV team there?
We, so the thing about lacrosse is there's not a lot of JV teams to play.
Yes,
So we have 3 on the schedule, just to get those kids that are younger and just started to pick it up, to get a little bit of experience, even if it's 7-on-7. But that is the hope, to get Berkshire County and surrounding towns to get some JV programs. And then again, Prue in the spring, Monument comes over and rows with us.
Thank you.
Now, in terms of girls soccer, does Lee have a girls soccer team?
Lee does have a girls
So
soccer
this-
team.
Yeah, so this is just boys we're talking about here.
Right, and not that we need to talk about it tonight, but that is something we're discussing. Our girls soccer numbers are low. Both of us have teams right now. So we have about 23 girls for Lenox that play, and Lee has a full team as well, probably around 23 as well. So our hope is if we can get this to go through, that maybe we could do a JV co-op in the fall and talk about who would host, and obviously have that discussion here as well.
So we do a motion first.
You need a motion?
So I'll move to approve the proposal by Ms. Rivers to host a cooperative soccer team with Lee beginning in the fall of 2023 for the 2-year commitment.
Any further comment?
I just had some questions on the form. It was attached with our thing. There's some things I didn't really understand.
Sure.
There's a section grades included in high school. It's a 6 through 12, so I assume that's the building and not the.
Yeah, not the team, yeah.
And then there was, let's see here. At the very bottom, it says approved, denied, approved 1 year. I didn't know what that meant.
So that probably means that they only approved us for 1 year, so we would have to reapply in the fall.
Who's the they? MIA?
Yeah,
Yes,
But if we voted in favor for 2 years, then that would go into MIAA and.
so if you voted in favor of it for 2 years, I just don't think I would have to bring it back here for another 2. I would still have to apply, do whatever on my end and put the form stack in, I think next March.
And I just, maybe this is more than we need to know, but my assumption is the reason MIA does this level of screening is just to avoid people utilizing the system to gain competitive advantages or to do something
Right,
kind of tricky.
yes,
That's why they. review
it is not really aimed at schools out here in the West. It's more towards charter schools in the Boston area, like forming big co-ops together, especially for lacrosse, hockey, things like that, and nobody knowing really where the kids are coming from and who's on the team. So that is why it's like a 1 or 2 year application process, and they do have those like numbers built in where they won't even consider it for every sport. So yeah, it's just kind of their way of policing it.
I mean, there's no question, I think that the opportunity for the students to be able to play the sports that they love to play, keep them engaged, you know.
Mhm.
Not even, I appreciate your comment about out of trouble, I think it's not even such about trouble or not, it's really about the community, the lessons they learn, and why do we have sports, right? So I think when students have come in their youth sports up to a certain age and they can't play anymore, it can be really quite disheartening, disappointing for them, and I know a number of kids from Lee play in the Lenox youth program, because I'm not sure how much, so those kids are playing together, they're playing as youth, and then they're moving up and they want to keep playing together, and I really do think that's a strength of what we can offer kids when they're finding their groove and what they like.
Right, totally.
For what it's worth, when you go to a Lenox soccer game, she mentioned there were 5, I mean, I could rattle off at least 3 of these kids from Lee who come to the Lenox soccer games just to watch, just to be there. They're,
Yeah,
they're really a part of this already.
They're
just
looking
want
to
see it in
compete.
uniform.
for sure. And the kids, just talking with some of the captains for next year and they're excited about it. Cause you know, what used to be like a really intense rivalry has really become like a close marriage, especially in sports with co-ops and
Yeah.
just competing together and trying to keep our programs going. It's become really important.
They're playing in the youth leagues, but they're also playing in Black Rock and
Yeah,
the even more competitive.
The regional
They
team.
play together, you know, they know each other quite well.
the other thing I will say is I do think, some of what I've seen, just from families, members that have played soccer and seen it, is that when we rely real heavily in the 7th and 8th graders, because 7th graders aren't eligible for varsity, but it's great to have younger players play, but when you're relying heavily on that, sometimes we end up with injuries, the size difference between the teams.
Yeah,
When you've got 8th graders playing varsity can be,
burnout
it
too.
can be problematic. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, if a student is just really a particularly excelling athlete, I've certainly seen students make varsity in 8th and 9th grade. But you also want them to be able to develop and be part of a team that feels balanced instead of a bunch of younger ones on varsity just because we need the numbers. It feels like
Right,
it's really, there's a lot, I know there's a lot of thought and strategy that goes behind that by the coaches and you as the athletic director, but I do think that's an issue.
Yeah.
At smaller sizes.
it becomes important because they're earning that spot, you know what I mean? It's not just, you know, we're filling this in, this with an extra body because they're here and. And then it's really important to play JV because it is developmental, so. You know, unfortunately, we haven't had that for a couple, you know, on and off.
It seemed like the girls program struggled a lot this year to fill their rosters.
Right,
How did the boys team get priority for co-op over the girls team?
so the boys were given priority mostly because Lee has their own girls soccer team.
Yeah, they don't have a team at all.
Yeah. And I don't know if priority is really. Like, the right word, it was more just kind of like them reaching out to us for help, kind of,
An opportunity to get more kids involved.
yeah.
All set for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Good to go.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Jeremiah.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, well, let's jump into the calendar. Everyone's waiting for the calendar. So, we're providing a draft calendar to the committee tonight to review, react to. Hopefully or approve in some sort of adjusted form. I'm gonna highlight mostly the changes, because I think you've all seen the calendar before. Your contract with your teachers has 4 full professional development days built into it. And this year, you started the year with 3 full professional development days. Then the 4th day was on election day. So the first change is we're proposing that we not open the year with 3 full professional development days. We open with 2. We keep the election November common professional development day, because that's the day in which all our teachers go across the county and interact with their peers. And we're adding a full day on February 2nd. So I think the feeling was that generally 3 full days was a lot to start the year off with, and that there would be some advantage to building another day during the school year for administrators, teachers and staff to engage in professional development in a part of the year where there's really not that time built in. So change number 1 is that we go from 3 full days to start the year to 2 full days. All right, so you look at the calendar. Our new teacher induction day, our orientation day for new staff will be on the 28th of August. And then all staff and faculty will report on the 29th and the 30th. What I'm going to be recommending, again, this will be really up to the admin team and Dr. Collins ultimately to settle. would be that the 29th would be in effect your district day. Where you're having your convocation, you're gathering, you're doing all your compliance training. And you're really sort of launching the year as a collective organization. And then the 30th becomes a building-based day. In which the teachers and the principals can work together specifically on agenda and goals and initiatives and training that's specific to their schools. All right, so the 31st of August then becomes the first day of school for students. And that day is scheduled to be a half day. But this is change number 2. My understanding is that this year you all opened with 2 half days for students. And I'm recommending that we cut that down to 1. So the 31st would be a half day for students with faculty professional development in the afternoon. And then that Friday, which is September 1, is a full day for students and staff. It'd be the first regular day of school. And why would I do it that way? Why am I recommending that we do it that way? Is that I like the soft opening, which is half day, transition, run the students through the routine, help them to orient to where they are, sort of run through a modified schedule, still provide a little bit of time in the afternoon for teachers to catch their breath, do some classroom setup, complete compliance training, but then have a full day before Labor Day weekend. And run through the full routine, get kids through the full day and staff through the full day, take a long weekend, and then hit the ground running on September 5th with a regular school year. So that's what I'm recommending. You could certainly debate any of those points, but I just want to call those out as some key changes. So again, that then means that 2 days to open the year for full day professional development. We keep the day on November 7th. We add a day on February 2nd. We could certainly debate February 2nd, what the right day to put that in is. I think there's we've had some arm wrestling around which day is the right day, but I settled on the 2nd, just looking at the calendar and space and where it might fit. So the other thing I added, and keep in mind that when I was in Pittsfield, you all groan when I say this, we had 10 half days. I'm waiting for the ground.
That's too many.
You can imagine parents love 10 half days. So I'm really sensitive to having too many half days and creating a lot of complexity in the lives of our families that have to then navigate and manage half days of school with their children when they're also juggling work. But I do think that there are very few opportunities that are baked into the schedule for us to work on things. You've got plans, you've got teacher goals, you want to be looking at your student data. So there's just a lot of work. There's never enough time. And what I hear universally, and I've heard it universally throughout my career, is that people want more time to work together, to work with each other, to collaborate, to look at student work. And so I am proposing a modest 2 half days be added to the schedule. One on October 6th and one on March 15th. Again, those days we could probably discuss and debate those, what the right dates are. That is if you choose to retain those days as half days, but I do believe it gives us a day in October, and September, October are kind of key months for ramping up the year, setting your goals, looking at student data when the MCAS scores come in, giving people a chance to sort of teachers a chance to really work together. But then March is just a particularly long month where I think if you can break it up with, and I understand that there's maybe some snow days in there as we had this year, but if you can intentionally put a day in there where our principals can work with our staff, I think it would be well received. So the only other thing which is not reflected on the schedule, which was requested, but I didn't put on the schedule, but I promised to pass along to the committee, is the possibility of making December 22nd a half day. I mean, a half day in the purest sense. There would be no professional development in the afternoon. We'd send people home, and that would back up into the holiday vacation. In effect, where Christmas falls on the 25th on a Monday, it wouldn't be something I would typically be inclined to recommend. Given that, you've got a couple of days between, but I'll leave it to the committee to certainly think about that as another request. And then the last thing, which I know that Bob will raise with you all, is just one email I received from a parent. I think you all received the same one, which is just rethinking the whole idea of February, April vacation and moving more towards like a college model or maybe a Southern model, which is a March break. So with that said, I'll stop.
Yeah, so I'll share the communication with everyone so that people at home can hear it too. This is from an Alicia Welch, who has a son, Nicholas Cheen, who attends Lennox Memorial Middle and High School. I'm writing in hopes that you and the committee will take something under consideration before approving the dates for the next school year. School year inexorably lengthens each year due to snow days. I would like the school board to consider shortening February break to 2 days rather than 5. School would be closed for President's Day and Tuesday after, and be in session on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. This would not only afford a long weekend break, but also would build in 3 additional snow days as a buffer against extending the school year interminably. This would allow the school year to finish on a reasonable date. Our previous district in Connecticut successfully implemented this proposal a few years ago to offset the number of snow days so that the school year did not extend until the end of June. Thank you for your consideration.
So I have a quick comment. We need the motion to discuss first one
Um,
On the calendar itself or on the
on the
first?
calendar.
I think let's have the motion later. Let's have the discussion first because we may have a variety of things. we
Sure.
wanna do.
So, well, I can certainly appreciate not having 10 half days. Something that we worked pretty hard on in Unit A negotiations last year was kind of eliminating half days. It turns out, staff and teachers dislike them as much as parents do. So that's one concern of mine. I'll wait for others to chime in before I go on.
Can I ask this as a question then, which is piggyback on what Megan said, is I really do like the idea of having that second, and it's not about half days, but the second, or the fourth PD day in March, because I remember at different times also talking about all the different things that kind of come through mid-year when you're getting data in and you're shifting and you want to kind of work together on how are we doing this year, and you're already planning as we're sitting here in April for next year, that March time I think can be really an opportunity for some rich work. So I'm gonna just say that. The question I have though is about the short amount of time of a half day when faculty is wanting to, so we're looking at this October 6th. Is faculty better off to do that as a full day in October, similar to the November 7th? Because it feels like, the kids leave, you take lunch, then you get together and it feels kind of short. So I'm not living it. But I wonder if we do a full day, if that isn't a little bit better, for families that are eligible and able to go to like a community center. They often plan a field trip day that's seasonal and fun for families that need that or that's available. The half days, I don't know, is it better to just take them and condense them into another full day? Maybe we have to talk about it some more, do a revised if that's an option, but I just wonder, I feel like you're digging into some. If you're doing the professional development right, you're digging into some good stuff. Is it better to do it with a full day? I don't know.
Yeah, just a quick comments. I mean, one is when you add a full day to the calendar, it won't be a day that the Department of Ed blocks as a day of school. So you need to have 180 days and certain number of hours to meet time and learning, depending on the grade level 900 or 990. So that would be the only thing I would say. So on the half days, you actually clock that as a day of school. It's considered one at 180, and that is how some districts manage the time. I mean, listen, I'm not married to the half days. I'm very open to constructive criticism and thoughts. I think right now, what it requires the principals to do is be incredibly creative to some degree and how they use time. in space, there's some great educational thinkers who say, the best principals figure out ways to find time and space for their teachers to work together. It's a profession in which we really do isolate people. And it's unfortunate, and it's the #1 request that every teacher makes, is more time.
Yeah.
But that being said, and so I know that they're using things like, how do we use our faculty meetings once a month, right? Our department meetings, which are once a month, right? And, sort of creatively and, really carefully scripting that time. So I feel like the possibility of a half day, whole days are great, certainly, but then when you get into the issue of time and learning and counting the days, but what half days, I think if they're structured right, can give folks is a block of time to work together. I'm not saying it's the perfect solution.
But just a little history, when we had, back in 2018, 18, 19, 1920, I guess. Dr. Merritt proposed a number of half days, maybe 8.
Yeah, it was a lot.
It was a lot. And so I think that, part of the reaction that we then faced in negotiations, a year or two later, was, that parents didn't like 8 half days. Faculty didn't find all of them useful. So then we went the last year where we front loaded all the half days. We had day 1 and day 2 of the students year. And I think we had a half day for Thanksgiving or Christmas or something. Maybe it was Christmas this year. I think this is a compromise that's, better than the 8 days we had back in 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it was. I could live with this calendar better than I could live with that one. And there's always a good reason for why, the calendar gets proposed with the 8 half days and so on. But it was definitely, we heard during negotiations, a hardship for parents, difficulty for parents, and certainly the UNA was not in love with that number of half days either. I mean, we wanted the PD, but we wanted to, have it largely full day PD.
And I guess that would be my one question, Jake, is just. What is your sense of kind of how things are going this year? I mean, you mentioned that it forces principals to be creative. I think my impression last year was that it was a joint goal and ambition to move away from half days. And so to 1 year in, then just put them back feels a little whiplashy. And so it's possible that everyone in the school is saying like, well, that was a mistake, we need to fix it. But I'm curious if you feel like it is definitely a failed experiment that we should do away with, or if not, if you'd be comfortable with us saying, well, we want to give this a shot.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and I'm not sure that I can answer that questions, as confidently as you probably want me to. I mean, the way I think about professional development, and Brendan and Jeremiah are both here, so they can speak to it more directly. I mean, I've watched how very specifically how Brenda will carve out time and use specials and how do we say this very carefully, coverage, right? To get teachers in a space together, or I was down there for literacy training, which were 2 half-day sessions. So meeting a group in the morning and then a different group in the afternoon. And she did that during a regularly operating school day, creatively figuring out how to get expertise on literacy in front of her teachers and giving her teachers space to work on that. I think anything that you do around professional development, which is lousy, is not going to be well received. If it's not organized, if it's not structured, if it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't involve your teachers helping to shape it, form it, and participate in it, then it's going to fail, right? So there's also a responsibility on our side to be working with the LEA on how that time plays out. But I also want to remind folks, it's not just the LAA, it's also your clerks, it's your custodians. Everyone needs training, they need, I've found in districts where we neglected other groups for training. Whether it was compliance training around OSHA, or whether it was, personal protective gear with our custodians, that sort of, when we bake that time in and then intentionally plan it, I think it can be really helpful. And I truly believe that, our employees appreciate it when it's done well. The number one thing I hear, the two biggest requests, and this is out of the middle high school, the two things from teachers. One is they want more space, right? That's one. And the second thing is they want more time. And some of that time is just to work with each other, right? And that could be, hey, would rather not teach 5 periods, I'd rather teach 4 and have a common planning period with my grade and team, or common planning period with my content teachers, content area teachers in my school, right? To talk about sort of the vertical alignment from grade to grade. But you can't get there unless you carve out the time for people to work together. So that would be my really lousy answer. I do think the good thing is, one of the things I'm doing right now this time of year is also signing for people to do work, right? To go to training, and the way you provide training, I always feel it's in layers, right? Some of it happens on company time, on these planned full and half days. You piece together things in the faculty meetings, and the staff time, and departmental meetings. You find creative ways, like Brenda's doing it. You build things into your contract where people can go out and take courses, participate in training. We go to Melissa and we say, hey, can we use the extra money to send a team to training this summer? There's not a formula to it. It's all these pieces that collectively get built together, I think, to help our teachers to learn and grow and work together. So again, I thought that the half days were a starting measure, and I also know I'm not gonna be here in the role. And maybe this is a conversation starter for this year that you can revisit next year with Dr. Collins. We'll have a longer view. I just would report out that my general experience is that when you do it well, time the teachers and staff have to work together and to engage in meaningful training can be a really powerful experience and exercise.
Not to call on you, but if you guys have other thoughts, it would be very helpful to know how you feel about what you're able to do now versus what half days in April.
So where the half days are placed in the calendar, I would. They're for the elementary school, they're in a good place because we are finishing our benchmarking data. So our groups of teachers get together and discuss student data. And then we replan our groups, we replan our intervention, and it is nice when you can have all the staff there, including support staff. The one recommendation I would have is I believe there's a basketball tournament in March somewhere where there's a lot of students absent on a Friday, so maybe move the half day to that day. Someone told me about that, so I'm just relaying that information. And also in March, we have to do mandatory MCAS training. So, which I know that I gave up a faculty meeting for, and you probably gave up a faculty meeting for, so that's just like something that we have to do each year. So it's almost like something that's taken away from us by the state. So March is a perfect month to have like a half day. Reflecting on this year, I will say that the professional development that we had was very informative. But it's also an exciting and yet nerve-wracking time for teachers where they want to be in their classroom, setting up for their new students and talking to their colleagues who had maybe these students the year before, and there wasn't much time allocated for that this year. So some staff went into the school year feeling a little uneasy. And wanting to implement everything they learned, it's just a lot at the beginning of the year, which can feel overwhelming. And one last comment, in asking my staff what they thought about the literacy person who came in, who was phenomenal. They really enjoyed her, and we're actually really fortunate to have her come back next year. But for the staff who came out in the morning and then went back to the classroom in the afternoon or vice versa, they didn't have that time to digest and think about. So again, they would have preferred if they could just not, because they had to go back in and teach. It's just hard. You're switching gears from learning, from being a student to being the teacher. That's.
I'm not sure I can add anything.
Okay.
I don't, I can't compare it to last year or even earlier this year, obviously, but, you know, recognizing that there is strain on families. You know, that's important to recognize. However, to Ronnie's point, I think we're able to get a lot done in a half day of PD. In some cases, you know, the energy of the day is helpful. And whereas if you work with that content over the course of a full day, you might not really get that excitement, that as much energy from the group as you can, you know, for a couple of hours after lunch, for example. And I like I really like the placement of the half days. I'd love to tell you that, you know, all our PD is always planned out every minute throughout the whole year, but the truth is it's really nice to have sort of these shock absorbers throughout the year. So when things come up and you need to throw, you know, a solid hour at something or an hour and a half that you didn't really see coming, you've got that. You don't have to do away with, you know, 1 or 2 faculty meetings in a row. It's good to have that time you can grab from throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, a perfect example now is the curriculum work that we're doing some initial work on, and we're stealing that time out of staff meetings to make it happen in short order to try to deliver for Dr. Collins sort of a framework moving forward, but also wanting to shape out some feedback from the faculty on what is it that we need, what do we focus on for next year, how do we shape that out? Got to listen to them, got to engage them, you know. And I know that one of the things that came out of the contract, which is really important, I did touch base with Mary on this, is this idea that we do want to have this committee that has a chance really to look at the calendar and say, here's how we could see this shaping out next year in terms of consistency and continuity through the arc of these various days and experiences that we sort of carve out throughout the 180 plus days. So, without again over scripting it for Dr. Collins is here, because I do want him to be able to weigh in and have some sway on what it is that you all, you know, are going to focus on.
No, that's really helpful. I think my hesitation or frustration is in part what we've been talking about, which is all the reasons people don't like half days. But also, you know, thinking back to the changes that we made to the contract last year, I don't mean this in an obnoxious way, I mean it in a very neutral way. There is something teachers value more than being given more time, which is not giving up their time. And that's totally rational for them, but a very important part of any contract with teachers is confining quite tightly their time commitment. And so, for instance, in the more recent contract, we did away with a number of those after school meetings every month. And actually added a day to the calendar, which is colloquially referred to as buying an extra day. You have to, that is a commitment that they are making, that that is a heavy one on all sides. And so we specifically added an entire day to the calendar to create more time for quality PD. That would remove the need for half days and in part eliminate the commitment to as many after school hours. And I appreciate it, it seems, could be entirely correct that that wasn't the right trade-off to make and that we need to revisit it. But I'm not comfortable with simply leaving that and adding back the other, and so. I mean, as between these two things, it seems to me it might make sense to have the half days, but not. Put that full PD, that full day off in the middle, that, you know, I'm hearing there's value to the kind of partial days. If we don't want the day at the beginning of the year, that's fine. But then I'm not sure we need to just to drop one into the middle of the calendar. That being said, that would require reopening some sort of negotiation on the length of the school year. So I guess I would put out there that either I think we should stick with what we agreed to and let that carry on for another year, but Dr. Collins come in and revisit at the point when we're revisiting all of this, or say, no, we really do want to change it and maybe open that back up. But just adding this stuff back in feels to me like a sort of worst of both worlds mix of competing priorities.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I agree, and it was a mutual interest. That came through pretty strong on both sides, and I just don't know if it's been long enough to kind of try it out. And like Warren said, maybe this isn't the right decision that we made, but I think, yeah, I agree with his points.
I'm always hesitant because I wasn't in that team, but I did enjoy the process of interspace bargaining, and it is, like you said, the mutual interests usually weigh pretty strongly that there's got to be a way we can meet everybody's needs. And then on the other hand, I'm very mindful of that the essential nature of that early October, because you've now had the kids for a month and there are kids that start to struggle, and when that gets put off, that has direct impact on kids. And then also thinking ahead to March and the next round of intervention, MCAS prep, whatever it is you need to do. So I struggle because I feel like I'm this group, we're not equipped to put our own, you know, we're not in the trenches, so to speak. And definitely anything that I think impacts how kids are learning, whether or not they're getting the services they need. But those meetings, I guess perhaps have to happen in other times of the day, and that certainly strains things. So, you know, I think we do have a contract, and I'm respectful of the team that negotiated it. I wonder if, I don't know if you want to at least talk about whether or not we should bring the group together to have a conversation about it. Because the other thing is I'm sensitive to feedback. So yeah, but we had a really weird opening to the fall, and it was kind of a mess, and things, I mean, there were really good things that happened, but then there was other things in the works that threw a monkey wrench into things. So I apologize, I'm kind of talking circularly, but I wonder if we would want to table the calendar until the next meeting and have a conversation about whether the feedback from the LEA is truly that we didn't use that time well, or if we want to say, like Warren and Megan are suggesting, that we stick with the days we have and make it work for next year and build it in when we have a new leadership team that will think about it. So I apologize if that seems a little circular, but I really do want to see us be able to make sure that the impact and the revisions that need to be made for student learning has the attention it needs, and that might not need to come in a half day, but it needs to happen. And I'm sure it does happen.
Can I provide some input? So, one point I wanted to make was that you can't take 2 half days and make them a whole day, because that adds a full day to the teachers for a year. And the other thing is that during the year last year, I did overhear conversations, can't say exactly from whom, but involving the superintendent and probably other parts of the admin, is that the days at the beginning of the year were well used. It wasn't that they weren't, but that left no chance for any other training throughout the year, except for the one county-wide PD day, which is held in November, on election day. So there was no opportunity to get buildings together or just the whole district together at any other point during the school year after school started in September. And that was kind of something that they talked about. Maybe trying to fix.
So question though, because we have, this is to everybody, but because the contract and the three of you were on the team. Moved those times into a day. If we condense into one day, we're still at the same number of professional development full days that we had. So it doesn't add to the, am I correct? It doesn't actually
No.
add to the teacher's calendar.
If we took, let's say,
February 2nd is the day we're looking at.
yeah, if we took,
Oh, that day. Okay, gotcha.
yeah,
That's the extra day. All right. I was focusing on these half days, but yes, February 2nd is that other day.
right.
So it does give you a second half of the year to do that professional development you're talking about. So if we eliminated the 2 half days, as Oren and Megan are discussing, kept the February 2nd as the fall move to this, I got lost in that. So, yeah, I mean, that
That would require an MOU just because the contract says it's at the beginning of the year, but it doesn't change the teacher's work year or the number of full days during the year.
Right, that's why I say that if, and putting aside all of the legal or contractual issues, based on what everyone's talking about, it seems like potentially the right solution is, rather than having created that additional full day, to take that sort of amount of time and say, hey, we need 3 extra 2-hour time chunks that are gonna be outside the regular school day, which is how the contract used to be written, that there were additional meeting times essentially every month. And so maybe you restructure what those look like, but that the right way to add what folks need isn't the 1 extra day, especially not the extra day at the beginning of the year, but rather a few of those chunks of time. But that those don't necessarily need to be half days that become school half days.
I'm just gonna weigh in and say that I really appreciate the comments, and I appreciate Megan and Oren a little bit more context about negotiations. And I'm glad that someone talked me out of bringing 6 half days to you. Anyways, I would suggest that, given the transition and what I heard tonight, that you just pull the half days off. If folks are in agreement, then if we can settle on where that full day belongs, that to me would be a nice, sort of waypoint for the coming year. And then maybe if I've done nothing else, at least I've introduced this idea of thinking about professional development and touch points throughout the year. So you have continuity, and I would just really, ask the committee to maybe continue to think about that, and engage with that conversation with Dr. Collington. Right.
and perhaps it'd be an opportunity to invite the LEA.
Yeah.
With the full leadership team to just have a friendly conversation about whether it makes sense to make an amendment contract about that.
Well, that's interesting, because what I got out of this conversation was, we've been calling all these PD days, and mostly they're not. You've got compliance days, you've got MCAS data review days, you've got metrics and review days that you want to do. I think maybe that's something we should talk about going forward at some point. It's like, hey, let's make PD days really about the teachers and professional development. All this other stuff, let's name it something else and land it somewhere else. Because it seems like what could be valuable time for the teachers to improve their skill sets is getting eaten up by more administrative type stuff.
There is a lot of stuff that the Department of Ed requires and requests, and that list grows longer every single year. If you look at the superintendent's checklist, it just grows every year on the list of things that folks have to be trained on and reviewed. So that's the reality, I think, of what our principals and the superintendents are dealing with. But point well taken. We used to organize our PD into 3 blocks: compliance, really training and growth opportunities, and then some sort of independent set of experiences in which teachers could explore, be entrepreneurs, and maybe be more connected to content. Whereas the training tends to focus on initiatives, curriculum, pedagogy. The content is something we also typically hear from from teachers, they don't get enough of. I do just want to make sure that you all know that, I did just think of this in a vacuum. The LEA did get, this was, presented to the unit and they did discuss it. They had some feedback on it. I didn't really see any pushback specifically on the half PD days built in there. There was a little bit of, questions around whether that Friday, September 1st should be a half day or not. And then sort of where do we place that full day appropriately and after the new year, is it February, January, March? What's the best spot for that? And we settled on that second, just at the sort of a midpoint, but just for context.
Thank you. I want to just also address the issue of the December 22nd request. Generally, not to be disrespectful of somebody saying, hey, could we do that? But I do feel like sometimes we do that when it's the 23rd, people have to travel, there's a buffer there, but if we have that as a full day, and it's a full academic day, several days before, for those who celebrate Christmas, the Christmas holiday, I think we should keep to that. Maybe at some point we'll use that practical argument of, are a lot of people out? I mean, if students aren't coming, but generally you have content for a full day. I think the half days tend to be fewer people take them seriously and come versus a full day. It is the end of that, and we go into the holiday because the way New Year's falls, we still have that Monday, as we open up the new year. So I think we should keep it a full day. If we find that there's a real strong reason next year not to, we get to, that's why we do a calendar every year. But every time you do a half day, I think there is a little bit of that. Not teachers, because they're contractually obligated to do what they do, but families and others go, oh, well, that's not a day we have to worry about. And I think we should kind of stick to, it's a school day, it's the 22nd, it's not the 24th, We have that weekend ahead to get ready.
If I may, it would be great to vote the calendar tonight. I would love to be able to publish it and get it out. And I'm not trying to stifle deliberation, but if we pulled the 2 half days off and took them out of play, maybe the question would be that, are we at a place where we're close?
I'd like to discuss the February suggestion that somebody emailed me and see what the table thinks about that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Which,
Alicia Welch email to
oh,
drop a couple days from the February break.
you want us to talk about that?
Yeah, I was gonna suggest, see if there was any will to talk about that among the committee members.
I mean, the proposal, as I read the email, was you keep Monday the 19th, and you take off Tuesday the 20th. And that's it for the February break. So then you keep those 3 days, the 21st, 22nd, 23rd in the calendar as full days. I didn't think, I actually thought that was a pretty good idea. It looked, you get a long weekend there, you get a 4-day weekend.
So
Before the end of the school year in a little bit.
I feel like I'm talking too much. The only reason I will raise this is that this argument has been made before, and the challenge will be the same sort of challenge I have on a snow day, where I'm the only school that's open, we're the only school that's open, and that we have employees that come in from other districts and they've got childcare issues and scheduling imbalances. And so that's one of the challenges. Everyone goes in with March or February and does the adjustment. I think it can work, but
So
we may.
we can work on it, say that.
So,
And not only that, I think that regionally, we have a tradition, who knows where it came from, right? Because if you travel outside of the area, like give an example of people, I just only know it because it's what happened to us. We went to Disney in February. And everybody at Disney is from New England, because we all are follow the schedule, unless you're from a private school. And then regionally across the country, I know some areas of the country follow religious holidays, so it changes every year. We've chosen to settle on 2 days that include a Monday, 2 weeks that include a Monday holiday. So we're not taking that away from our school year, and it's been the tradition. And I do think that's one of the things that I had brought up in our prep meeting, is that, we're not an isolated just Lenox, and we have a lot of programming and a lot of cooperative and faculty and staff that share it. So unless the whole county was saying we're moving to this model, I think it just becomes just kind of chaotic and probably not really helpful. And we were all going to go to March breaks, we could, but this is probably has its roots in something that I just haven't bothered to look up, because it's been going on for as long as I can remember, and I've been around
When I was a kid, we had this, yeah, a little old,
a little bit.
and I was in Eastern Mass.
And I don't think, actually looked at the time, because we started opening earlier in the year. Because of this issue of how late the school goes, and I remember at times we were pushing up with snow days up against the very end of June, and our contract, I believe, I'm looking at our last drafters of it. Has it that the very last day possible for teachers is what, the last day of June? Yeah, so I think by now opening, and many families would say, I can't believe you opened before Labor Day, you know, and thinking of Labor Day as being, you know, sacred. The practical side is for many families, there's sports and things that start in August anyway, and you just kind of get used to it. But we did that opening before Labor Day to shorten the end of the year part, and that seems to be what a lot of people are doing, and it seems to make sense. I think when it comes to camps that many kids go to in the summer, most of them don't start till after the July 4th holiday. So for families that have to think about childcare, you know, closing earlier doesn't necessarily help people. It leaves them trying to figure out where to put their kids and then go to work. That's what I think. But
Well,
that may be just from my experience, but it certainly was my
I
experience.
think if we changed the February vacation, I think there'd be a firestorm of criticism. When I worked in Region 1, we actually started schools. We had 4 full days in August. And then we did have, in Region 1, we had the abbreviated February. So I don't know if this person came from Region 1 or not, but and it was a surprise to me because I thought everyone just had that. But I was the principal of the school and I did what we had to do. I worked, but and it worked. I mean, it was fine. I think we had some PD days around it too, so the kids may have actually had a little bit more time than staff. But
But we don't need to spend any more time on it. That's enough of an answer.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like if we were school committee of the world, this is actually, there would be other problems, but this would be good, good idea. We'll probably should do this, the school committee.
okay,
So I'd be happy to make a motion. So I'll make a motion to approve the calendar, not as drafted, but amended to eliminate the half days on October 6th and March 15th, and then otherwise as drafted.
I would second that.
any further comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Right.
Okay, you got it
And
now.
thank you for this, because
Yeah.
I do know there's a lot of thought that goes into how to use people's
Good
time.
discussion.
And I'm actually looking forward to hearing more about the professional development committee, which I know things are still forming, and you know, how the new leadership team will work on some of that, as well as what Brenda's already been doing.
So I just had one really quick thing, which wasn't on my list here, but I wanted to just raise, is we had talked about the possibility of doing more of a community meeting prior to town meeting around budget. FY24 budget, which would be just sort of being available to answer questions, give an overview before the town meeting. So I just wanted to raise that with the committee to sort of see what the interest was and what the possibilities were. I know when we were doing agenda setting with Bob and Veronica, this came up, and we were looking at the possibility of doing something. No.
And this has come for me a lot in the sense that I certainly have heard over the last couple of years, and in the year that I was running for election, from a lot of people, and last year with our town meeting being a little bit more contentious, and people saying that they wanted to have an opportunity to meet with us and know what's going on before the actual town meeting. And one person spoke publicly at the meeting saying, well, how can I answer questions about that? Now, clearly we have these meetings, they're published, the public is welcome. They can seek, especially at the hearing date, they can seek the opportunity to make comment or ask questions about our budget. But sometimes I think the nature of our agendas makes it a little hard for people to feel like they want to kind of insert themselves. So and years ago, when I was on the committee before, we did this. We had a night where you could come and you could hear about the budget, and we'd offer refreshments and people have a chance for a little more informal question and answer. I think it maybe stopped because people weren't coming. I'm not really sure, but I think it'd be an opportunity this year to say, hey, you know, we'd love to have you come, meet us, ask questions. It could be, you know, short, but a good week before the town the town meeting, so that if people have anything that can be a little bit more of a two-way dialogue. If people don't really find it useful, we don't have to keep doing it, but I just think it'd be an opportunity to have some interaction. I've had people in the community say to me, you know, we want to hear from you other than just when you ask for money. And I think there's been a lot of initiatives to do that and to talk about the kids' art in the community, theater, other things that are happening. But this is a little bit more of a conversation about the business of things. So I was thinking it would be a good thing to do, and I'm happy to help plan it. And support it.
And while we would post it as a school committee meeting, it wouldn't necessarily be something that everyone had to go to.
Yeah, you know, it would be
Post it just in
public
case
so
we
that,
had. It would be an opportunity for the public to, you know, similar, this is something that had been proposed earlier. We have a, off and on during the year, have a forum for parents around some topic or another. This one here, I don't think the budget's gonna be as contentious this year. Nothing knows for sure, but I think it's a good public relations, the community step to do. We're looking at April 27th as a possible date. To do it and see if people come. I can remember back in 1984, we did a review of our math program. We had an outside team come in and 7 people showed up. You know, this massive review.
Yeah, I mean, I won't stand in the way if folks want to gather for this purpose. I just feel like that is why we gather every Monday or however often. And we could consider ways to make it more welcoming. I don't think it's especially hostile environment. We got the lights a little brighter.
a little bit.
But you know, I mean, we have 3 or 4 extensive meetings, the purpose of which is to talk about the budget and welcome as both at the beginning of every meeting and then with an entire public hearing. Any comment or inquiry from anyone. And I don't believe we had a single comment or inquiry at any point in our budget process. So, you know, if at the point where we're like doing a building bond, or if there were a contentious issue, I think it would be really constructive, but I don't think we should. I would be very skeptical if there's demand, and I don't think we should suggest to people that we need to provide them with additional meetings than the many meetings we already do for them. And then last, I would just say, I think, Ronnie, your point about having more things that we do that are not just asking for money is exactly right, and we've done that and should continue to try to do more of it. But a meeting on the budget wouldn't, because I don't think it's what most folks just did. So whereas I would generally be excited to see more opportunities for us to do stuff, I wouldn't be able to make it on the April 27th. So if folks want to do it by all means, but I don't think it would be in the committee's best interest to start scheduling additional meetings for the purpose that we already have done meetings.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there, and I think if we're going to do something like that, I think we should move that up into the budget discussion evenings when we're really in the thick of it. I have this concern that we'll have these meetings, people come and they'll give their opinion, but we're waiting for the vote right now, so they're gonna feel like, oh, you invited me and you're not taking my advice.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, admittedly, it's a bit of a point of frustration for me because we do hold these meetings every 3 Mondays, right? And they're posted well in advance. And while I'm not opposed to doing these style of meetings in the future, I don't know if the budget is the best topic to start with, just because I don't know what you're going to get out of it. Again, like Bob just said, it's going to town vote, right? So other than being a Q&A, which, you know, we've had several school committee meetings about said budget. I don't really know what you would get out of it.
And those, any questions I have, they could ask a town meeting and get an answer.
or ask us in the meantime and
Or ask.
and we answer.
Email when they want.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
And I think that,
but maybe there's something to be said for like, we add some time in one of those budget review nights to this really, you know, a friendly forum for people to come and ask questions.
Maybe we, in the future, we market it better, right? Maybe
Yeah.
it's more, this meeting will have a designated, you know, time for
An
that.
actual Q&A rather than just
Right.
public
I
comment.
understand that not everybody follows the agendas when they come out, you know, and that's understandable, people are busy, but maybe if we, you know, honed in on that in the future, that'd be. my
Have,
preference.
you know, coffee sessions with the superintendent. if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely gonna come
That's
up.
all
Mhm.
great stuff. More contact is better.
Meet the superintendent will definitely be something I think we'll wanna do in the fall. That was in the plan for last fall.
Yeah, it didn't work out.
We were all ready to schedule it.
Almost.
well, I think,
Not the way to go.
I think given the fact that people can zoom into our meetings too, and we still have no questions. Maybe,
Yeah, no, that was really great. And
Great, it's gonna light up all of a sudden.
the using of our meetings. Well, and maybe there is the idea of, you know, we do the public comment and sometimes the public comment ends up being something that it hasn't happened in the recent, but we've had opportunities of public comment and students are coming make proposals about theater. We've had people making proposals about sports and so, and they've been quite robust. So the public comment doesn't have to be read a letter and be done. And so maybe we just expand that a little bit in a way, if it seems to be the need, because you're right, I think, I'll just be honest, I get sensitive when I hear, and that's just maybe my sensitivity. People talk about lack of transparency, lack of cooperation, lack of clear focus, and then last year at the time meeting, when someone said, well, I'd like to be able to dig in and ask questions at this meeting, but we don't have time, and I'm like. And I said it that night, I said pretty much exactly what you said, well, we have a multiple number of meetings that you're invited to join in. And participate in whatever way you want, it's just. Maybe town meeting isn't the best night to do it, but doesn't mean it's not afforded to you, so, you know, that's maybe a little bit on me of being like, yeah, there's a lot of transparency here. And a lot of opportunity for people to engage, so. Thank you, now I could do my other meeting that night.
I can see Bob already deleted from his calendar.
another free night. In fact, my burning isn't done, maybe I'll be burning ahead. Okay. Are you all set?
I am officially all
All
set.
right, so we'll move to new business and I sent out to all of you, first off, Megan and I. And Christine, in some combination over the last several months, have reviewed sections A, B, C, D, E, and F. Of the policy manual with Liz LaFawn. The process has been that Anne Marie Martin, I guess their name, somebody at MASC is the person responsible for kind of looking through all our stuff. They do a markup copy. Liz brings the markup copy to us. We talk about every one of the policies, why the wording was changed. And for most part is because of the compliance language, legal citations and cross references changing. Sometimes a sentence is added, sometimes our policy, in some cases the feeling was that we didn't need a policy, and in some cases they would say, you know, this is a policy we have that you don't have. And so what I sent out to you was sections A, B, C, D, and E, and F. In the clean copy, without all the comments, because that would have been. It would have been an enormous amount of stuff that. Where we ended up was, I think it was more important that you get the clean copy than you get the markup copy, even though you won't see every change that was made. But I will say, you know, and I'm going to tackle this section by section. In section A, which was foundations and basic commitments, there's not anything particular to point out from section A review, except that the state is issuing new wellness guidelines, so those policies will likely change. And so the school, so there's a wellness committee working right now in the district. So the work that comes out of the Lenox Wellness Committee will need to be dovetailed with whatever the policy is and work, you know, with Liz. And broadly speaking, section A includes updates on topics including non-discrimination, harassment, and retaliation to comply with current laws. So that was a relatively, I'm just opening it right now. A relatively short section of policy. In
The
section,
section, all of section A you're talking about?
all of section A.
Okay, can we, I don't wanna interrupt you, but I just did, but, can we talk process for a second?
Sure.
Because, and I tried to do my homework, but it was a very busy weekend, so I did most of it, but. We've got 6 sections here. So number one, will there be an opportunity, like, 'cause we have to vote on them, right?
Right, we want to vote to accept the group of policies.
Right, so some of them is just little things, right? So there's a place where a sentence needs to be punctuation, there's breaks, probably the way it translated into the PDF. So at some point before they become, will someone do a complete, well, I'm not criticizing that there was a lot of work that went into it, but do a complete run through for typos, page breaks, weird kind of
It'll be-
formatting.
It'll be put into our document. I don't know any. How that process works, getting onto our website.
So my understanding is that it's going to come to us as a full document that will then be uploaded in place of what's on our website now, not inserted in pieces. That it's the whole, because this is comprehensive, this contains everything, not just things that were changed, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So a couple things, number one, if it's coming in and it's gonna be uploaded, is it gonna be searchable and is it gonna be broken out into sections as opposed to just one continuous document that you have to, that's some of the criticism of our current book is that you have to kind of, where is that in the system? You know what I'm talking about when you're trying to find it? So if we have A, B, C, D, are we gonna be able to see, here's our policy manual and you can link to each of the sections, or is it gonna be
Well, right now.
600 pages?
Right now,
continuous?
you can click on section A and it takes you, or section C, let's say. it
Okay,
takes
I
you
think
to
I'm
section C.
thinking more about the student handbook, because when I was trying to find certain policies, we were,
Yeah, that's working.
it was.
Well, most of it,
Yeah, policy manual is very nicely.
it's not.
The
that-
handbook is the one that I think.
I think, yeah, having it all in one document is preferable, I think, because it's easier to.
Yeah.
Just control that and find where you.
So we just have to have a process, and I'm happy to dig in if we need to, just, I don't wanna sit here and bother people with like. You should sentence break there, and there's an extra whole blank page in the middle, or any of that.
There are
baloney.
formatting issues that I have identified that I wasn't able to fix them between the time they came in from MESC and now. So, I think they do need a proofreading, I think. Maybe, well, the governance and leadership committee is asking you to approve on the substance changes.
That's what that's why I was talking about process, is that if there's the ability to focus on substance rather than that. I'm happy with the agreement of this group to even spend some time in the office or whatever, going through and doing take this, I'm far from perfect when it comes to this stuff, but I just feel like as an academic institution, it's just important that we're
Another set of.
very careful about that. Because I think it reflects on us and we should do it. We
The
should do
other,
it.
the other thing I noticed is that none of them have a date on. when
Yeah,
they
that's what I was
were
gonna ask about that
revised
too.
and Adopted.
So the revised and adopted would be, if it were today, for example, it would be dated today, so we would
That
add
would be,
those, yeah.
yeah, they're approved on would be. The date that would be applied.
So if people are inclined to focus on substance and not form, I won't. And I didn't finish doing all that, because at some point I was like, it's probably not the best use of any of our time, but I'm offering to do it later. I just have a couple comments that relate to A that are substantive.
Okay,
Do we have a list of substantive changes that took place in these policies? Because I'm a little uncomfortable just blanket saying, yeah, I approve them all, when I don't know what's different from what we have.
hang on a sec.
I mean, some of it is in a way, I would just say that that's why with the subcommittee, that's what the subcommittee's been doing. And because they had the markups and we didn't, so the other way would be to come back next time and look through do our homework to look through the markups. Which I kind of agree with you too, but we did have a subcommittee doing them.
I guess I was hoping there was a little briefing sheet that said, here are the things we thought you guys might want to know about.
I have that right here.
Yeah.
Okay,
I have the sheet right here.
I figured you might. I'm pretty organized guy.
Well, it's funny because Christine took a lot of notes on section C and D, and then she didn't enter them in here, so I had to go back and read all the policies again. But. So I don't have extensive notes here, but on. So in section A, yeah, I'm done with section A, but you've got some substantive stuff you'd like to talk about at some point, Ronnie.
Yeah, and I don't like, I'm not trying to disrupt it, I don't, it's not disruptive, it's just.
Let me go on to section B.
Kind of a clarifying question on A, there's a note in there for mission statement, something, is that just sort of, we should remember to revisit that at some
I think so,
point?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so you're moving on to B, or you're going
I
back
was
to
gonna
A?
move on to B, but I can go back to A.
So similarly, it says we should look at mission statement. We also have, the page 19 is district goals. And I wonder if mission and goals are actually similar in the sense that we could make that part of a subcommittee to, you know, and have a discussion about mission and goals as part of either a retreat, or usually that's good retreat material, but the goals are just interesting. I mean, I don't, they've just been there probably for a very long time.
They have been there.
I think, it may sound weird, but I have questions about it, sort of like, well. To ensure maximum efficiency in the allocation of material resources. To ensure maximum efficiency in the allocation of human resources. Maximum efficiency, I don't know, like, I think it's interesting because there might be things that we think are really important for our school that might not fit the definition of maximum efficiency. That's just something that just makes me think about it. I'm not gonna try to get too wonky, but I feel like goals are similar in a way to things we've been talking about what kind of school community do we really want. They can be captured in goals, they can be captured in mission statement. They don't necessarily have to have both, but if we have goals, I don't feel comfortable just kind of like endorsing that we keep them. If we, because a reference at the bottom is educational philosophy, you know, which is also, I mean, I'm fine with what we wrote, what was written, but I wonder if we're just adopting, or if that's something really substantive we should be talking about.
Just looking at it myself here.
That's hard, so I
Are there
really do.
ways to, is there a way to tag policies that are gonna require a deeper dive? I'm assuming that a lot of the work that MASC is doing is sort of touching on.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, I guess one suggestion I had was that it seems to me there's two different exercises. One is reconsider any policies that we're not happy with, and another is doing this update. And to some extent, I think we all just need to stipulate that in accepting all of the technical updates that we want done, it doesn't mean that all 600 pages are written exactly the way we want them. And just as it was open to us 2 months ago to say, hey, we should revisit X, it's open to us 2 months from now. Nobody's going to say, Ronnie, you voted to accept the school district goals. That means they're perfect. It means you accepted the proposed sort of technical amendments as brought forward. And so I think kind of doing the review so that we all agree that everything that's being changed here is technical and not a definition. I'm trying to remember I guess in some negotiations we've been talking about the idea that we want to update things to reflect the way the world that it is, which is a very different discussion than wanting to change how the world is. And so I think doing this just as a update technical description as the world is, with nothing implied that it is how the world should be, we can get this done, and then anyone who has any thoughts about how the policy should be different than they have been, that's just I think that's a very different process.
And like a standalone conversation,
Yeah,
retreat, something like that. Yeah, that's a good point, because I think one of the other things is we recognize it was needed because we had so many things that were just outdated or we didn't know, they weren't clear. And so if we get to a sort of a clear slate platform, then we move from there.
Yeah.
And the work's been done. I certainly don't want to
Yeah,
in
and I
any
think
way take away the work.
as a member of this subcommittee, I mean, this is really what we did was just. It was adopting MASC language pretty much. It might be, you know, we tweaked 2 words here, we put students instead of children, right? That's
Yeah.
those kind of updates. So I don't look at this as a.
Well, so here's an example, like ADF, I'm looking at the ADF policy about food. Now there's a whole section there about serving sizes. how many ounces of this and how many ounces of that. To me, that doesn't belong in. Like, I don't see why that's a policy matter.
ADF,
That's wellness policy.
Yeah,
It's added by MASC, the wellness policy that we're adapting in our policy. I think at some point we have to kind of trust that a subcommittee is doing what
Yeah.
we're doing, and, you know, Liz LaFond is very knowledgeable in this. I do think in the future, you know, something that we all noted was moving forward, I think we should revisit this on a more frequent basis, so we're not sitting here doing this and having everyone approve a large number
But
of
even
sections.
like this ADF policy, right? But. It says limit portion size of food and beverages sold individually to these standards, so. Milk, 1 cup. So if your kid wants 2 things of milk, he can't get it. Right? Or it just means we're selling them only in 1 cup increments, like that.
so I think that goes to this issue about, since we have a wellness committee too, about asking, gee, what do we want the wellness committee to do? Once you've formulated, would you please look at the wellness section and see what needs to be changed? Because I remember when we first got some of this, I believe Dr. Coster was our superintendent, and the feds had just changed the regs and we adopted them, and we were like, why are we doing that? You know, so I think it does make sense in a way to think in terms of the wellness committee, maybe our committee looking at missions and goals, our subcommittees, TLC and others, governance, looking at how we do it, but having that platform of all the policies have been reviewed, we're not completely out of compliance of things that we must have, like our sexual assault policies and all of that. And then move to a set of goals for the end of this year and next year to really dig into these and tailor the ones that need tailoring.
well, you know, I did say right at the start that ADF and ADFA, you know, are being, the state is looking at these now, and MASC will,
Yeah.
you know, so the ADF itself, the Lenox District Wellness Program, is a Lenox one with some MASC updates. The wellness policy on physical activity and nutrition is just ours. That was not an MASC one. We left it in there pending whatever's gonna happen from the state. Whether it even needs to be there or not, I'm not sure. ADF alone may be all that we need to have in the policy manual. And let me move on to section B. If I can find section B. So section B was our board governance. And there were actually quite a few policies there. If you go to BBAAC.
Can you give us a page?
Actually, I can't.
Okay, that's all right, I'm scrolling.
That one we eliminated. It was said, because you won't find it.
Oh, oh.
Yeah, I made it, yeah. This is not something that should be in policy. It was one about requests of administration for reports and information. You know, individual members shouldn't be asking for reports that if of the administration, school committee itself could say, we want to, you know, we would like Jake to, or Melissa to come up with X or Y, but MASC felt it shouldn't, it was not a policy that needed to be there. Now I can show you, I can send you all the markup stuff if that's what people would like, so you can see where we started and where we ended, if that's what people would like to have. BDE clarifies subcommittee participation. BDFA-E-2, submission and approval of the school improvement plan. That notes that plans are supposed to be submitted no later than July 1 for the school year commencing at that time. And, you know, I know that many districts, you know, when the ed reform law went in 1993, we were very particular about getting our reports in by July 1. Many school districts have gone to the fall to write them and get them approved. In, I think in Pittsfield it's November, December, they typically get approved. you're already 3 or 4 months into the school year before you've got your school improvement plan. The law says they're supposed to be done by July 1. So I think I pointed that out just because that's a shift that, may need to be thought about going forward. BEDB notes that the committee should vote to rearrange the order of agenda items. Once the agenda is set,
No,
it's supposed to be a vote if you decide to do it. Now, typically, we may say, let's move that, we have somebody coming to make a presentation. We will say informally, why don't we move that to the, and I've had no problem with that model of doing it. Strictly speaking, if you're gonna rearrange things, it's supposed to be a vote. It's supposed to vote.
Supposed to vote because.
To change, because you published the agenda order. And now you're taking something out of order on the agenda. Presumably the agenda is supposed to be gone through. And that's, as I said, we've informally.
So it's an MASC policy.
I think it's a Robert's Rules of Order thing, maybe.
or maybe even an open meeting, with notification.
Um,
We've been doing it informally.
yeah, and it's never caused a problem. I'm just pointing out that that's what the policy says. BEDH removes this language. Improper conduct and remarks will not be allowed. Defamatory or abusive remarks are always out of order. If the speaker persists in improper conduct or remarks, the chairperson may terminate that individual's privilege of address. And the reason this is because of the law that has, just been the legal opinion from the state Supreme Court that.
Yeah.
So those things are permitted now.
They are permitted.
You just have to expel them in the legislative laws.
No, this was brought up as that we're bridging their First Amendment rights.
But the key to it is our policies around the length of time of comment, who can, and all that, and we just can't, I'm like, I don't like what you're doing or how you're saying it, so you're out. We have to stick
Yeah.
to our rules of time. and
Yeah,
place and
yeah,
manner.
still have some guidelines, but
Yeah.
you can't have that in there.
Okay, that's helpful to know.
BHE reiterates that any electronic correspondence between and among committee members needs to have Amy CC'd on each one.
Say that again?
Say it again. Yeah.
BHE, which is
You're so fast, Bob. We're like scrolling through it, like what?
use of electronic messaging by school committee members. Reiterates that any electronic correspondence between and among committee members needs to have Amy CC'd on them. I say Amy, I mean, whoever's sitting in Amy's seat, whoever,
So if we email each other individually, but not in a quorum and not on
Because
a-
if there's a freedom of information request. Amy should have all correspondence so that everything would, she would have all the documentation.
even if it's one member to another member.
I believe so. I'd have to. Scroll down to BHE.
Well, texting would be a bigger problem with it. I think
Yes,
we're
it's
pretty-
like how-
we're pretty good about replying all the emails. and
Yeah.
things, but
Yeah,
Texting's an issue.
because how do you do that? Yeah.
Also postal correspondence.
What's that?
What is that?
Says electronic. What if I man USB?
And I mean, that's it on section B. Were there any substantive things on section B that anyone wanted to? Would we like to? I mean, are people okay with the idea of voting to accept section B?
We're to accept section B.
We've done QQB yet.
We didn't do that.
I'm sorry, no, we haven't done A, I'll go back to A. I
Are
mean,
you trying to see what we can,
yeah.
get off the
We
agenda?
have something down here. Yeah, so did we have a second?
No, I'll second. I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
So wait, what do we just look for?
we just voted to accept section B.
Okay, because I thought we went back to A.
No, we just voted to accept section.
I think it was the idea of going with the, what do we agree upon, and then go back to it.
Yeah.
And I'll just say that my comment about that, Oren's statement was well you need me to say it's well stated, but I mean, I agree actually that like, okay. If what we're agreeing is that we're accepting the work of the governance committee and MASC as we've asked them to do. To get our policy manual up to date. And then things that really could use revisiting, because we have new people even and more to come. Like mission statements or goals that we should put that on a future agenda. I think that makes a lot of sense. And there are many other policies that will be revisited because they need to be for a substantive reason. So I don't feel the need to nitpick on A. I'm happy to help with making sure typos and things aren't in there.
Okay,
Administratively, if everybody agrees to that, so
So-
just accepted B,
so would we like to have a motion to accept A?
I move we accept section A as and by the subcommittee.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, section C, which is,
I don't know if we could rearrange it.
I seconded that. There was- For A.
Okay.
No, for B, it was, I moved.
I have B, I
Okay.
needed a Warren moved and two seconded.
all right, section C was general school administration. Relatively short group of policies, 10 or 12 policies there. We removed one called CL, which was administrative reports. It's not one that MAC uses or recommends. It was about all kinds of reports that principals had to write and whatever. And they suggested we use CM, which is the school district annual report, instead of CL. And
Which one, CM, you said?
CM, which is the very last policy. An annual report covering the diversified activities of the school system and administration's recommendations for their improvement will be prepared by the superintendent and presented to the school committee. To be made available to the public and used as one means for informing parents, guardians, citizens about the programs and conditions of the school.
So it's a sort of like, here's what happened this year, here's where we are, and then our school improvement plans will. Piggyback on that and say, here's where we're going, that kind of thing,
And there's a legal reference, MGL legal reference to that,
okay.
So in the report, what you would consider we provide to the town or the town meeting? Is that something different?
No, that, I'm thinking that that could be exactly what,
Okay,
what counts for that.
okay, thank you.
I think there are districts, I remember my cousin lived in Vermont and they published a whole book of photos of kids and, everything about programs, budget, was something like that. We don't do that, but I think the town report is probably covers, I'd have to read the MGL 72-4, but that's probably what covers that. So are we good with approving section C?
I move we
All right.
accept section C as prepared by the governance committee.
I'm happy to second that.
Got that, Amy? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, section D, fiscal management, which is where. I have to bring it up. There are a couple of things I need to point out on this one. Not too much though. There's a concept in here that, we'll need to talk to Alyssa about. What's all picture? DBD, budget planning. The MSC version reflects student-centered budgeting. And so there were some changes in wording, but that's essentially the budgeting should be done with students in mind. But DBJ, Melissa, DBJ, and this is probably something you do routinely, but
Yeah, I noticed it's different.
in keeping with the need for periodic reconciliation of the district budget, the school committee will consider requests for transfers of funds between cost centers. Now, is cost centers a concept that you talk about all the time, or
Yes, so.
it was something new to us on the subcommittee?
Special ed is a cost center, Morris is a cost
Right,
center.
right.
transportation is, so, yes.
so that's something that you routinely do, but so if we're going to be transferring money between cost centers, then it takes a vote of committee.
So does that also mean between like a ELL teacher at the elementary, ELL at the secondary? They could be considered a, their own cost center because of the subject matter,
No,
but that's getting down into the weeds.
No,
So
I
if I
think-
wanted to do something with that, it would need to come to the committee.
yeah, I mean, it says all requests for transfers between cost centers as approved during the annual budget deliberation must be submitted to the school committee for approval as part of the school business officer's quarterly report at the business meetings of the school committee. So,
have quarterly reporting.
well, we get.
Yes, you missed the last quarter.
All right. But anyway, I just want to point that out. And then
Yes, I saw that.
DD, which is grants and stuff. All grants and gifts to the district must be reviewed and accepted by the school committee. And just, does that mean the, all the entitlement grants and everything?
Yeah, typically, we could bring it back every year. So for the start of, whatever our last meeting is at the end of this year, we would have the entitlement grants.
Yeah.
And the continuing grants that we have for approval, even though they're already existing. That's the way, I think Central Berkshire still does it that way. That's.
Well,
the
I
way
know that
to-
we've accepted gifts from people and whatever,
And all
but,
donations should come.
but I guess all the grants we are supposed to vote to accept. No, if we choose to accept. DGA authorized signatures. Now, this was one that was very interesting, and this is DGA. The committee may, we changed it from will to may designate by roll call vote a single member responsible for review and approval of all warrants as correct and approved for payment. Now, if we did that, that person then had to, every meeting, we would have to report on the warrant by that person. So we chose to leave it at May because we like the procedure we do now where everyone gets to look at it. And so it's not something that we felt we wanted to do. We did not want the word will in there because, there are districts where a good part of their meeting is spent going over the warrants. And I don't think that's a direction we want to go. We all have an opportunity to see the warrant. We don't, if we have questions, we can raise them. So that was kind of the important one there.
So I guess this is a question, just on the process of when you guys were reviewing this stuff in the subcommittee, like, why did we adopt it if we didn't like it? Like, why are we even putting it in here or making it?
Because it's mass general law. It's a mess. It's a mess. It was part of the new accounting procedures that.
The Modernization Act, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago.
So can we change it to a May? If it's law,
It's not the law, it's the option, you have the option to do it this way.
We just didn't want the word will there because that made it seem like we had to have one person.
We're doing it the way we up for admission.
Leaving it open to change.
It allowed districts to be able to do it this way. You don't have to do it that way.
okay. All right.
And then the last one that I have a note on for this one was DJEA bidding requirements. We removed that because it's all incorporated in DJE.
So I had a question on DJE.
Oh, and you think I would better answer, huh?
Um,
I'm Megan will answer this one.
So in November, the state increased the levels for school districts. So between 10,000 up to 100,000, we can get 3 written quotes. 50,000 is still the municipal level, but for school districts, it's up to 100,000. So do we want to stay current with the law? Or was that the 50,000 put in because that used to be the level? Or that's the level the committee wants?
Well, why don't, that number is not something I don't believe we discussed. And so that would be something, why don't we approve these, but let's check on that with Liz and see if,
Because what?
because we can come back and change that.
Yeah, typically I have the charts in my office when a purchase comes up, and I follow the MGL 30B.
Yeah.
For services and products, but I can always make a note if it has to be less.
And are we still doing our bid openings via envelope and paper, like it requires in our policy? That
Well,
seems very archaic.
what bid did we do? We did, everything is electronic, and so
And so this
you make note
policy's
of the time that it comes in, via email. And we did when we hired DRA, that was a bidding process.
That's what I thought, and that's
But
why
it
it's
was all electronic.
so the paragraph here says all bids will be submitted in sealed envelopes addressed to the superintendently marked with the name of the bid and the time of bid opening. Bids will be opened in public at the time specified, and all bidders will be invited to be present.
I have gone through that process.
So we did it in
Would
the-
we do that with bus?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty old fashioned. Nowadays.
When we built Morris School, we were all in here for the bid openings and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That was
Yeah.
25 years ago. 30 years ago.
So I do put bids can be submitted via postal mail, USPS to this address, must be received by this time. And I also add or electronically, because it's just.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Yeah, so on this policy, let's DJE, let's get back to Liz on this to talk about the electronic stuff, because that's not mentioned at all in here.
And the limits, it sounds like.
And the limits,
Yeah.
yeah.
You want to approve it pending recommendations from Liz, or just approve it as it is?
Yeah, why don't we approve, well, if people wish to, let's approve section D. With the need to review DJE with.
Let's just approve D, which is. Because if we don't approve D, what we currently have, which is the same thing. So we accomplish nothing by not approving it, so let's approve it, and anyone who feels passionately about this sealed envelope text, as they could have last week, can bring forward an issue next week.
So without a motion,
I move to accept section D as prepared by the governance.
I'll second that.
all in favor? Aye. Moving right along. Section E. Support services. Okay, so this is a relatively short section here. We removed EBCC bomb threats because that's covered under emergency plans. We removed EEAED, which was bus stop supervision. And other than that, we changed some wording so that a lot of our safety stuff wouldn't be public, like the location of security cameras and stuff like that. There was some changes that we made along those lines.
Can you just speak to what the issue of, I'm just scrolling forward, of the bus stop supervision was what? What did we take out?
Well, let me find that.
I believe that it somehow implied that student behavior was, the school was responsible for student behavior on the bus.
But but bus stop supervision was the responsibility of parents.
Yes.
And let me see. Let me find Liz's comments on that. Yeah. Yeah, that was just a Lennox policy. MASC does not have a recommended one on that. Yeah. Scroll through. And they suggest we remove it. While law requires the school system to furnish transportation, it does not relieve parents, guardians of students from the responsibility of supervision until such time as the child boards the bus in the morning and after the child leaves the bus at the end of the school day. The way students behave at bus stops is, of course, of concern to the school system, and the administration will cooperate with parents, guardians in an attempt to solve behavioral problems at bus stops. If such behavior creates a problem after children board the bus, it may be necessary to suspend the riding privileges of those involved.
To know the backstory of the feud that prompted the adoption of that.
So that's like, the whole point is that that's a vague and an overreach and a whole bunch of other issues, and we don't need that, so. Bye-bye.
So section E. We want to make a motion on section E.
I move we accept section E as prepared by the governance committee.
You all second that?
All in favor? Aye. And section F is a very short section. And
That's why I did that one.
I don't have
first.
any particular note on anything there. One recommendation is that, memorials. If a student passes away in an accident or something, that any memorials be in the form of scholarships rather than something within the building. But
But you didn't include that, or you did.
let me go back and see. Oh, that was FFA, let me see. No, we did not include that. That was removed. Anybody want to make a motion on F?
I move we accept section F as prepared by the governance committee.
I'll second that. I was gonna move, but I didn't want to take your thunder.
Oh, I so rarely be ready.
All in favor? Aye, thank you. So we've done 6 of the sections. We have a few questions here and there. And we can address those at another meeting, but Christine and my time on the committee is limited. We are trying, Christine's out climbing, rock climbing in Colorado, and I was down south for a while. So they didn't schedule another meeting, but we're hopeful that there might be a meeting next week or whenever Christine gets back, and we can arrange with Liz and try to get, if they've got them prepared for us, another 2 or 3 sections, for the meeting on April 22nd. But we'll see. Or April 24th. whatever it is. So,
Thank you for all that work. It's a lot.
yeah, I mean, we really had a lot of questions as we went through each of the policies and
I'm sure.
to make sure that it was Lenox. Based on, pronouns were changed. School district, where it said school system was turned to school district. There was some things like that that were changed throughout all the policies. But I'm happy that we've got 6 sections done, there's 6 more to go, and I anticipate we might be able to get another 3 or so done. There's 3 fairly quick ones that we might get done, and then there's 3 longer ones that I don't know if we'll get to or not.
Yeah, thank you.
So, thank you. Okay, subcommittee meetings. Governance and leadership, we just told you what we've been doing for months. Human resources has been,
We had a good Unit C meeting today and are on the home stretch. We will be able to bring at least an outline of the contract to the next meeting for review and discussion. And then we will also be meeting in that time period on district HR policy issues.
and teaching, learning and culture.
We have a meeting on Wednesday.
5:30, you saw Dave, he won't be available.
Wasn't sure if it was today or Wednesday, yeah, so we could reach out and change it, or we could. Press ahead, I mean, if you're available to go, we can do it.
And finance. We had a meeting.
Did we? The budget passed or 2 weeks ago?
Whatever, we had one before. We had one a while ago.
Do we have,
Yeah, it was right before the budget,
do we have our thumbs up or thumbs down from our colleagues? Next door
I
or
think we've
across the
been
aisle?
told that we're okay. I don't know officially what's happened, but I think we've been informally told that we're getting approval from finance committee and selectmen, but I have not heard, I don't know. So.
I think the finance committee did approve.
Mhm.
And the select board is voting tomorrow or Wednesday.
Okay, school building, there's nothing new to report. I did have something that I shared with Jake the other day. In terms of developing, and Melissa, it's important for you, in terms of developing, our capital budget each year. In reviewing the documents that we got last year, we submitted to MAS and MSBA. We had a document from DRA with photos and everything of all the areas of concern. And then we had a budget sheet that indicated the approximate cost of fixing those. And I think to the extent that it's within our fiscal ability to do some, we may need to, that might be a good document to work from in thinking about capital expenses for the high school going forward. That there may be things that can be ticked off from that $22 million list that are tackleable and will improve the quality of life for students and faculty. I didn't think about that until I was reviewing the documents for the MSBA submittal, and so I mentioned it and sent the documents to Jake, of course you have copies of the documents. And this might be many of the things are massively expensive, but it may be a useful tool, in thinking about that in the future.
Yeah, I'd also like to get together some sort of, not to create another committee, but. I work closely with the head custodians at both of the buildings and maybe. Monthly meeting, principals, custodians, myself, where we talk about the status of the building and what's come up and what has become a priority to them, so that we're all on the same page. A lot of times it's not in an organized fashion. And, we have lists of things that we want to do, but sometimes something bumps it out of the way. So I think that going forward, I would like to start that so that we have that every month or every 6 weeks, whatever, once I talk with all of them, so that they feel is sufficient.
Okay. We're at that point of the evening where supper might be looming in our future.
We adjourn.
You're really on a roll, and I would second that.
All in favor? I'll adjourn.